welcome to the Extraordinary Health Podcast. Today, again, I have with me here, I have Allie and Liz.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about functional medicine. Both of them have just kind of even a brief bit of knowledge themselves about it. More we've talked about in the office here. Both of them are new to the office as well, so I thought they'd be great to have on the podcast here today so that they can probably ask some of the questions that the average person's going to ask here in regards to functional medicine, how it works, and all that sort of stuff. So let me just kind of give you a brief overview of functional medicine then. So most people think of traditional medicine. I'll just give a brief synopsis here. You're going to think of, I'm going to go to a different doctor because, hey, I have a heart problem. I'm going to go to the cardiologist. I have a nerve problem. I'm going to go to the neurologist. I have, some kind of, issue going on with some of my internal organs. I'm going to go to a gastroenterologist or an internal medicine specialist. You get the idea here. But they're dealing with different organ systems. They're dividing everything out by an organ system. And a lot of times what they're dealing with is just the signs and symptoms that are going on. So that really is reactionary medicine. We're waiting for something to happen to your body and then trying to figure out something to deal with those signs and symptoms. And a lot of times, they're just, even if they do help you deal with those, they're just getting you back to kind of average. But that's where it's kind of dangerous. I mean, you could be just one step away from having a big major catastrophe, whether that be a heart attack, a stroke, cancer, diabetes. I mean, they're going to wait until you're out of the average range, and then they're going to do something about it. But with functional medicine, we're going to look at things as far as not are you in the average range, but are you in the optimal range? And by getting into the optimal range, the chances of you then having something happen get minimized significantly. So I guess, do you gals have any questions as far as that goes here right now? I mean, usually I talk about in the office, that's more reactive or reactionary, whereas functional medicine is a little bit more, it's proactive. We're trying to deal with things. It might be off of some signs and symptoms. We have a questionnaire called the Medical Symptoms Questionnaire that everybody would fill out, and it's going to give us an idea of what kind of an organizing system for functional medicine, which there's 7 different areas that we're going to kind of look at here. Which of those areas do we need to pay attention to the most? And, really gets down to really treating the gut first, because that's going to deal with assimilation, which is the first area here. And why don't I just list off the other areas here? So we have assimilation, then we get into defense and repair, and then we get into energy, then we get into biotransformation and elimination, as well as communication between the cells, which is hormones. Then we get into transportation, which is your blood and your lymphatics kind of clearing stuff out. And then into structural integrity, which goes down to the cellular level all the way out to the macroscopic kind of neuromusculoskeletal level, or we get into even some of the chiropractic work that we do in the office here. So those are the 7 areas there. And depending on where a person might have issues with that medical symptoms questionnaire, we're going to maybe dig into that a little bit deeper. And a lot of times if it's really broad across the board where people have problems, we're always going to start with assimilation. We're going to look at digestion and elimination first, because if you're not breaking down the foods or even supplements, if you happen to be taking them first, you're literally, not going to be able to have any of the other systems work as well as they possibly should. And that's going to set you up for, having signs and symptoms, which might turn into diseases, which would send you into a traditional medical clinic.
So you always start with assimilation?
In most cases, yes. Unless somebody's coming in and they really have very targeted other things going on. If assimilation looks good and they have other areas that are showing up that are higher, then we're going to obviously start with those. But looking back, if they have some issues in assimilation or something like that, that score fairly high, yeah, we're going to look at that. Because again, if you're not breaking down the foods and absorbing into your system, whether it be proteins, fats, carbohydrates, looking at your macronutrients, as well as vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. You're going to be probably running into problems here, and are going to need to be going back to that anyway. So
makes perfect sense to me. Kind of back to that old adage, you are what you eat, right?
Correct, really. I mean, and that's where it does make a big difference a lot of times to even, eat locally. I mean, that's kind of been a big push kind of lately in a lot of areas in the country here. You want to eat a lot of the foods that are from the area where you're at, because you're going to be bringing in, a lot of the nutrients that are probably going to help you out with things in your environment around this area here. So that's always going to be a good thing. So depending on where you're at with all those questions on that questionnaire, that might lead us into doing labs. So in the labs that I'll even start off with are going to be the same exact ones that are going to be done in a medical clinic. Except, again, like I mentioned before, we're not going to look at, are you average, where the medical clinic has, a lot of times there's a pretty wide range there. Some of ours might be the exact same as theirs, but a lot of times theirs are pretty broad because they have to adjust those labs all the time. And, it's not going to be looking at the optimal aspect. So we can look at them completely different. So you might go into the medical clinic, and a lot of people do, and they'll say, hey, they said, oh, my labs are good. You're in the average range, so you're good, but you still feel like crap. And what do you do then?
Head for the optimal range.
Definitely, I mean, you want to head for that. We want to look at optimal here, so that's where, we can help out people here by taking a look at their labs from a functional medicine standpoint and looking at whether or not you're in that optimal range or not. And if you're not, usually it's very, very targeted corrections for that. It could be diet, could be nutrition, So again, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, we might want to look at, altering those as far as what you're eating here. Otherwise, it might be very specific vitamins, minerals, or phytonutrients here that we could be getting people that could help them out. And
so
go ahead.
When you're talking about getting people into the optimal range, which I love that verbiage, optimal. So do you categorize that between, like, say, age group, gender, things like that, or is it optimal like across the board?
There's different ranges. I mean, and we have software that kind of looks at that. So obviously we're going to put in male, female, and obviously some things when you do look at age, I mean, you get into some of the markers like cholesterol or something like that for people. It could vary a bit there. Obviously, postmenopausal females or females going through menopause are going to have different levels of hormones there, and that obviously, messes with your system. I mean, hot flashes and all that sort could be coming on because you're not getting that proper cellular communication in between all the cells in your body. So it's just kind of freaking out, doesn't quite know what to do because estrogen levels are maybe diving like crazy. And there could be things that you could be doing to just help correct that or ease it. You don't want to necessarily substitute it. I mean, sometimes people do need to get into, hormone kind of replacement type situations. That would be something that we would have to refer out for somebody here. But if that's the case, then that's what we're going to do. But again, that's where it's nice to have those labs to kind of go off of. And it's the same, like I say, same thing you're going to be getting done in a medical clinic anyway. So if we need to refer you out, we can do that here as well. So
nice. Yeah, that was kind of my question, was if these panels just kind of look at deficiencies, or if it's also looking at like in proteins and stuff like that, or if it's looking at imbalancing or imbalances in the hormones and everything. But you just answered that.
It's just looking at it with kind of like a different set of glasses here. We're looking at them completely differently. I mean, traditional medicine has gone a certain way. Like I say, they kind of section things off into different organ systems, and if you have something wrong there, you're going to get referred out to that specialist so that they can take a look at it a little bit further and see what maybe needs to be done. Whereas functional medicine, it's holistic. We're going to look at everything here and how everything is working together here. And that's why I say a lot of times, yes, we go back to, assimilation or an elimination. Are we taking in everything that we should be taking in here? If not, then we need to look at how we need to alter that diet. I mean, I always say that people obviously need to look at your calories. You need to find a diet that's going to work best for you. And it might be, you might need a keto diet. You might need a low-fat diet. You might need, who knows what it is. I mean, we got to sit down and look at what your body's really saying here and what you really need. You can't just say, oh, everybody needs to be on the keto diet, or everybody needs to be on this. There's a keto diet with functional medicine here where we help to get enough energy in so that the mitochondria of your cells give you the proper energy. I mean, that's another section here. So if you feel like you're just worn down, tired, and all that kind of stuff, that diet might be a good solution for you. So when we look at it as a whole, that might be the way you need to eat. Other things are just even, with assimilation is food sensitivities. I'll add that, or food allergies. And there's tests you can do. There's elimination diets that we can do. I mean, everybody's going to be different, and everything has to be customized to the individual. So, but yeah, as you would come in and, we go over a history, that's where we get into, it's called antecedents. We want to look at all the different things that have maybe happened even, leading up even to before you were born. How did the pregnancy go, if with your mother? Did she get exposed to anything, when she was pregnant with you? Was there some even mental trauma, emotional trauma? Was there anything like that going on? We want to look at, is there certain triggers in your life that maybe happened? You're younger and maybe you had ear infections and you were just on multiple rounds of antibiotics or something like that. And that's then caused GI disturbances and gastrointestinal erosions, which set you up for having sensitivities to foods, maybe the foods that you're probably eating on a regular.
Quit talking about me. No, that speaks to me. I imagine that speaks to a lot of people. I know that I was definitely a sick kid. I was on a lot of antibiotics, and now I have GI issues now. Went through some blood labs and found out the, celiac, and had to stay away from gluten foods. And yeah, that definitely makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
And that's where, we'd want to use the labs if at all possible here to kind of guide what we're going to do for treatment. But some people, if it's not outrageously out of control for somebody, we can just do it off of the signs and symptoms. And we kind of hate to do that when there's major things going on, because you really need to know everything. But, you get into, let's just say it's a GI type thing. It might be specific amino acids, like L-glutamine is awesome at then helping to repair all those tight junctions in the GI tract so that you don't have food kind of leaking into your system, causing food sensitivities again. Let's say you're postmenopausal or something just say you have normal menstrual cycle or something like that, and you're dumping out the hormones from your liver into your GI tract. If you have gastrointestinal erosions, or those tight junctions have been broken down by antibiotics, aspirin, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, alcohol, you're dumping those hormones right back in your system, and all of a sudden these women end up with hormonal issues, and it's more because they have a GI problem and they're dumping stuff back into their system because they have a leaky gut. That's what it's called. And they're never clearing the stuff out, and then they just have mental, emotional problems. It just leads into a whole host of other things, and it actually goes right back to the gut again as being the problem. That's just one example. But obviously that's what we need to figure out with each individual person. Kind of have to be that, health detective and find out that root cause of the problem here so we can actually get it cleared up for you so you don't have to deal with it anymore.
I think you just came up with a hit new primetime television show.
The Health Detective.
Health Detective.
I was honestly just
have to get the
thinking that. I'm
sirens
like,
in here.
oh my gosh.
Health Detective, functional medicine master.
I'm picturing
But
Dr. Beckham there with a little magnifying glass.
We must get you some labs. No, I love that though. That's
It's something where you get into. Anybody can have different kind of health triggers here, and we just need to kind of find out what they are. But that's what we would sit down with an initial consultation, is find out some of these things here so we can kind of map it out, find out what's going on. And is there, some other things that are maybe, are mediators, or things that are perpetuating what you have going on. So all of a sudden you find out you're gluten sensitive or something like that, and you continue to eat gluten.
Highly do not recommend.
The problem's not going to go away.
0 to 10 would not recommend.
It's just kind of crazy. I mean, it's simple things that just don't get looked at or looked at in this way that just perpetuate things over time. Brings up emotional things at home. All of a sudden you're having fights with your significant other all the time. It just snowballs, so getting down to that root cause of the problem here is going to help deal with not only some of the physical issues going on, the biochemical issues, but even mental, emotional, and psychological. I mean, that kind of gets into the whole premises of functional medicine as well, because we want to treat, body, mind, spirit, and your emotions here too. So that's kind of the next section here. I guess I kind of hit that there. Other things that we kind of want to look at here too are some genetic predispositions. I mean, a lot of people can go out and get the 23andMe, all the DNA tests here now, where you can find out, do you have any kind of genetic condition that might predispose you to certain types of health conditions? Not that you have them, but if you already have some genes that are already setting you up for that, what do we need to do to support them so that you don't have these conditions occur then? And another aspect here is just all your experiences or your attitudes and beliefs towards everything here. You grew up in a Christian home, there's just certain attitudes and beliefs that you have there that are going to drive your life, or even then experiences. Hey, I grew up and I knew if I did something wrong, this was going to happen. It just mentally is going to affect you the rest of your life until you really work through all those issues. And that's where we might have to refer people out to a psychologist or something like that to deal with some of the mental type aspects that they're dealing with that aren't getting cleared up, and that's causing even other issues then too. So, and then we get into kind of the last aspect here, which is really we're looking at it's kind of more lifestyle medicine here, because we need to also, in functional medicine, it's kind of a partnership. We're working with the patient to help them get better. So there's certain things that we're going to be able to do as providers, but the patient's also going to have to be committed to making some changes here as well. For me, I think the number one thing is literally sleep and relaxation. I mean, that's the first thing, even on a chiropractic basis or biomechanical basis, if we're looking at dealing with things like that. If we can't get somebody to be able to sleep well at night, it just takes that much longer for them to heal up. I mean, they need to start to focus on sleeping or learning relaxation techniques during the day. So it could be meditation or breathing techniques that help out with that. But I think the one tip that I can give people for sleep, and everybody has, well, I should say maybe not everybody, a lot of people have alarms that wake them up in the morning. What you really need to have is an alarm for you to go to bed at night. So you get to bed at the appropriate time so you get enough sleep. Everybody should be getting between about 7 and 8 hours of sleep. I personally use a ring that kind of tracks my sleep, so I watch that pretty closely, and I know when I didn't get really good sleep, and dealt with all the issues even then of what was happening with my own sleep there. So once I kind of tweaked all that, it's made a huge difference. The next thing that is, personally people can do is just exercise and movement. The easiest thing there is just to get out and start walking. I mean, obviously you have certain conditions going on. Make sure you get those things treated, get them dealt with so that you can start to do something. But even if it's just like walking in your home, you might walk up and down the hallway for a little bit. If you can get outside, that would be the best. You can get some fresh air, get out in the sunshine. If you can walk down to the end of the block and back, and keep doing that till you feel comfortable enough where you can maybe walk around the block. You just want to look at getting 1% better every single day. You also want to work somewhere in between about that 50 and 75% capacity. You don't want to work out at 100% because then you just killed yourself and you're not going to want to do any kind of exercise for probably days, if not weeks, or maybe ever again. I don't know. I mean, everybody's different when you get to that, right?
So you're saying it's okay to use exercise in moderation?
I that's
Noted.
the thing that people just don't understand. I mean, they just, I should go out and exercise, and then they go and push themselves as hard as they can, and then next thing you know, it's just hard for them. They've aggravated something. Once you feel like you're aggravating something, you need to really stop. Even in any kind of sport, if you're trying to rehab something, you want to make sure that you're working up to that point where all of a sudden you start to see something get sloppy. You need to shut her down, because you're now overworking it. You're causing more harm than good. next time just plan on doing a little bit more until you can continue to, improve that. Obviously at home, then the next area here would be nutrition and hydration, making sure you're getting those proper calories in. Once we kind of figure out what kind of diet you really should be eating here, make sure you kind of stick to that there. Make sure you're eating on a regular basis. It might be intermittent fasting. Hey, you're going to do an intermittent fast for 12 hours out of the day or 16 hours out of the day. You're going to try and eat in an 8-hour window. That way, your body can absorb it. Also, eating, far enough away from bedtime too. I mean, say you're going to go to bed at 10, you need to shut her down a couple hours before that. You're not shouldn't be really taking in any kind of calories. You can drink waters or teas, hopefully not any caffeinated teas, but I mean, things that are going to help you kind of relax and slow down. You don't want to have your body trying to digest food at night, because that's where people end up having health issues with that. They gain weight because they're literally have that food sitting in their stomach all night long, and you can get GERD, you can get reflux. I mean,
did you say what you would recommend for how far before they go to sleep?
2 hours.
Stop eating?
I would say 2 hours would be a good average there. I mean, you can maybe have a small little snack, maybe an hour before you go to bedtime, but I'm talking like, a handful of popcorn. I'm not talking like eating a whole bowl of popcorn or something like that.
I'll just have to go to bed
like
later.
Your meal, like your evening meal. We'll just call it evening meal. Probably 4 hours before you go to bed. Anything that's big and heavy like that. Something a little bit smaller than that, you can maybe eat 3 hours within a bedtime there. A little bit, medium-sized meal, small meal, 2 hours away. That way, you can sleep at night. Also, make sure you get plenty of water in. I mean, that's just, if anything, even when I see labs come back in, I don't know how many people I see that they just are dehydrated. They just are not taking in enough water, and they think they are. Well, I drink this, I drink coffee, you can have arguments about coffee, whether there's water in there, but there's caffeine in there too, so you're probably losing some of that, just from the caffeine, probably getting some water content there as well, but, generally shooting for that, take your body weight and drink that about half of that in ounces of water in a day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, that should be like 100 ounces of water that's just a guideline. It's not anything that you need to stick to hard and fast. But obviously, if you're outside exercising and it's hot out, you're sweating a lot, you need to drink a bit more. You also need to replace your electrolytes. The next thing that people personally can do, for is stress or resilience here. I mean, people think of stress, they always think of distress. They think of things that are going to make them, tight or, nervous. Or what do you guys think of when you think of stress?
Well, when I feel stressed out, as it were, I would say high anxiety, kind of like things are a little bit erratic or out of control. But then I also think of stress on the body as well. Not eating enough and overworking yourself, or, taking a workout a little bit too far and causing too much stress on your body. So I think of two things. I think of mental stress and physical stress, but
I'd agree.
Liz has a lot of words here, so. But really, when you start to look at stress, I mean, we have stress and resilience here, but it's distress and eustress. Eustress would be the resilience aspect. What are you doing? So exercising enough that it's going to help actually build your body up. Eating the right foods, not too much, not too little. I mean, it's finding those happy mediums with everything here, so that you're not stressing your body out. If you're around somebody that's kind of toxic, that's stressing you out, what are some things you can do either internally to be able to kind of calm down, give yourself a time out away from it or whatever, or even to get away from the situation. What do you need to do to just remove some of those mental stresses as well? So, which kind of gets into the next topic of, relationships or networks here too. So that gets into, making sure you have good, healthy relationships that aren't stressing you out, right? and having a network of other people that you can go and talk to if need be, to help kind of build you up and bounce ideas off of and all that kind of stuff so that you feel connected. Another thing is trauma. If you have some trauma in your life, whether that be a physical trauma like an accident or something like that, obviously you need to get that stuff healed up as quickly as possible. The sooner a person can get trauma dealt with, the faster you can kind of move through it there too. Obviously there's a certain rate, but I mean, if you don't do anything about it, it's just going to sit there and fester. It's like getting a physical wound trauma. Somebody, you get your arm cut or something like that, you can go in and get it stitched up and it'll heal up and you have a nice fine line scar, or you don't, and you end up with this big huge keloid scar there. I mean, obviously you can see it when it's a physical type trauma, but if people have mental traumas that they don't deal with, they can end up with big, thick, kind of like keloid scar mentally that they're just trying to shield themselves from whatever had happened to them in the past, and sometimes they just don't even realize it anymore because it's been such a long time, or PTSD type things where things have happened, maybe you see them over and over again, you're in a bad accident or something like that, and you just can see that over and over again. Usually that can happen more frequently the closer it is to the trauma, less frequently as it goes out, but people still sometimes will have certain triggers that might set them off. So the next thing here would be like microorganisms. I mean, making sure in your diet, kind of gets back to some of that diet and assimilation here. You want to make sure you have the proper probiotics, in your gut. Your gut is loaded with billions of natural bacteria that help break down foods and get all the vitamins and nutrients out of those as well, so that your body can function normally. So making sure you have the proper balance there. If there are lab tests to get that assessed to make sure that you do have that proper balance there. I know on a medical basis they might argue about it a little bit, but they're doing fecal transplants now. So on their end, hey, I don't know if I'd want to have a fecal transplant. I think I'd rather do a lab test, find out what I'm short on, take the appropriate ones, and then retest it down the line, make sure that we do have the proper balance there.
If there's an option to go back to the beginning and start the functional medicine process over with, I would much rather do that than have somebody else's fecal planted into my body. For sure. That doesn't sound like something I ever want to do.
No.
Just the mental aspect, I think, would be a tough hurdle to get over.
So you're going to take this feces and...
I didn't even know that was a thing that happens.
Yep. South Park did an episode on it. That's how I know about it.
Oh, of course.
And kind of last thing to kind of wrap things up here is environmental pollutants. And that could be anywhere from chemical pollutants, noise pollutants, light, as far as then being able to sleep properly and all that. There's a lot of different things that way that, hey, if you can get control of your environment here and have something so that, you can put the least amount of stress on your body here. You do need to stress it at times to make sure that it's growing and functioning normally here, but you don't want to have too much or too little either. So by removing as many of the environmental pollutants, you live in town, get your blackout curtains for your windows when you're sleeping at night. Maybe you need to have some noise canceling headphones or something like that to knock out some of the noise. I mean, there's just, tons of different things to do. Maybe you need an air filter to take out some of the particulate matter in the room. Maybe that adds some white noise to the room to sleep better. So there's a ton of different things once we get into environmental pollutants that you don't quite think of. People think of chemicals, but there's a lot of other things that it can get at. So that's just kind of a quick overview here of, functional medicine as far as, what it's all about here, how it's different than, current traditional medicine. I think how it can complement it here, and I think a lot of people, if they would start with functional medicine, they probably wouldn't even have to go to a conventional medicine facility to deal with those things because they have now proactively prevented a lot of things that would probably send them there. Anything else you guys can think of here?
Nothing really, but now just talking about it makes me want to do it. I want to see
when we get
my
these labs
results
done.
Yeah.
And it's once everybody gets things done, I mean, it's always quite interesting. A lot of times it confirms what you think maybe has been going on, or takes you in a completely different direction. You're like, wow, I didn't realize that would affect this. So that's where, once we kind of dig in, we find that root cause of the problem, we get it dealt with. It's amazing just how much stuff it clears up, and what you probably won't have to deal with anymore. And then if there are other things, say it's hormone things or something like that need to still be dealt with, and we've dealt with, assimilation and elimination and all that, and it's probably going to be a lot less than what it was in the first place. And if it's then just helping to detox that stuff out, then we can get something going that way. So, well, I think it's time to kind of get it wrapped up here anyway. But so, anybody has any questions or wants to get started, they can just just comment on the post or underneath the podcast here. We'll have this out in multiple different social media areas as well. Can always call the office. We do have free consultations to see if what you have going on is something we can help you with. And if we can, we'll try and get you a treatment plan outlined so you even know what the cost would be as well. So, and you can reach the office at 701-356-0016. We'd be happy to help. Have a great day.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
See you in the next podcast.